So a couple of Sundays ago, I talked about a Sunday school class that I taught once where we talked about the relationship between faith and doubt, and they joked that the dictionary.com definition of faith would be lack of doubt, and the dictionary.com definition of doubt would be lack of faith. Well, as I looked at the scripture, I think what I realized was really the necessity of doubt. That doubt is actually important to our faith, and that the opposite of doubt is not faith, but it's certainty. You see, there are many things that we can be certain of, but there are way more things that we should not have complete certainty in. I mean, we can be certain that 2 + 2 = 4. We can be certain in some of the mathematical and scientific laws that our scientists, our mathematicians have discovered. We can maybe be certain that driving anywhere near the UT campus on game day is a bad idea, although if they keep playing like they did yesterday, maybe not. But we can't be certain of many, many more things. We can't be certain UT is going to win a game this year. After yesterday. As much as I'd like to say that we can be certain, we can't be certain that TCU will win the Big 12 this year. It's just a near certainty. But the problem, as I see it, is we're too often certain about the second sort of things, the things that we should not be certain about, the things we can't actually have certainty in. We put all our certainty into those types of things. And that's what the prophet Jeremiah is writing about in our text this morning. So you saw that he ended with this metaphor about cisterns. So I'm going to give you a little historical context on this so that we can probably understand that metaphor, because that's really the crux of what Jeremiah is getting at in our text this morning. Now, in ancient Israel and in many dry, primitive cultures all over the world, it became imperative that water, when they got it, be saved. Now, Israel would often have a very rainy, wet winter, but a very dry summer. So there needed to be a way to capture the water when it was raining so that it would last through the time when it didn't rain. Now, the ancient world, to solve this problem, came up with cisterns, ways to hold the water. So these cisterns were often made of things like limestone, different types of stone that would be placed in the ground so it would keep the water cool. They would catch the water when it rained, and then it could be passed out and used in the dry season. Now, the problem is, however well these cisterns were made, cracks would inevitably form, and water would find a way to seep out through these cracks. Now, the more cracks there were, the more water could get out. So you could go to bed one night with a full cistern and come the next day and it would be near empty. So this reality of cracked cisterns where trust would be there, that water would be there for them, would be met with horror at the discovery that water had seeped out. So this was a metaphor that brought up a very vivid and understandable reality to the audience. Jeremiah is telling them that they're putting their certainty in something that doesn't deserve that certainty. In this case, the cisterns. Though they appear to be capable, they're in actuality cracked. What Jeremiah is getting at with his metaphor is that the dangers of false certainty are what we do when we practice idolatry. Dr. Portier Young, a professor of the Hebrew Bible, wrote a commentary on this text that I read this week. And she wrote, "The tricky thing about idolatry is that often when we're doing it, it doesn't seem like we're worshiping a false god. It seems like we're worshiping a true God. Or it seems like we are pursuing good ends ordained by a true God. It seems like we are pursuing the something necessary for our survival. And if we believe that our true God desires our survival, then surely this thing that we pursue is not idolatrous. Even if it feels empty and dry, even if it really is draining us of life and soul. End quote. She notes that the metaphor Jeremiah is using is, for Jeremiah's audience at the time, a newer form of technology. That is, the prophet is warning against putting faith and trust and certainty in something that doesn't deserve it and isn't worthy of it. She writes, Jeremiah tells us that idolatry is the act of trusting in our own technologies as we move further and further from the ground of our being. Such idolatry leads us to forsake the practices of justice and the very God who sustains and nourishes us as we work to master our environments, conquer obstacles, establish security, and develop new frontiers. Too often we trade a glorious gift and calling to go after things with no substance, no meaning, and no worth. In doing so, Jeremiah's audience has completely forsaken and forgotten God. And Jeremiah notes that no one has paused and asked, where is the Lord? Jeremiah has God say, none of you have asked, where is God in what is happening? Where is the God who led us out of Egypt, who took us through the wilderness and brought us to this place? None of the people are asking that. And Jeremiah notes that none of the religious leaders are asking, where is God in what we are doing? Where is God? Does God have a place in what we are doing, where we are spending our time, our efforts, our money? Where is God in the way that we hold tightly to our guns? You know, I wrote this sermon on Wednesday, and this morning I was like, oh, I'd probably better put something in about guns because we had 2 more mass shootings over the last couple days, and realized I already had it in here because that's where we are as a society, where of course it's already in here because this happens every single week now. I don't have to go back and rewrite sermons anymore because it's our reality. Where is God in the way that we hold tightly to our guns, refusing to acknowledge that a change in our laws needs to be made? Where is God in the way that we treat those who didn't have the fortune to be born here, but due to circumstances that are often beyond their control are forced to leave their homes, leave all of their belongings, and take a journey with no guarantee of a good ending? Where is God in the way that we price basic care and needs so that the possibility of getting the help that some people need for health care has to be balanced against food and rent? Where is God when people die because they can't afford insulin or other medications that would keep them alive? Where is God when what we really pray to is guns and power and nationalism and money? Dr. Portier Young notes in her commentary, as God lays out her case against her people, she repeats one charge in particular. They did not say, where is the Lord? The people did not ask, nor did their priests. But we must ask this question, and we must ask it in front of God's people. Where is the Lord who abhors the economy of slavery? Where is the Lord who liberates the oppressed? Where is the Lord who lights up the impenetrable darkness and leads refugees in the wilderness? Where is God? I'm reminded of a little cartoon, much like the one on our screen this week, that I once saw that had like a frog and a duck sitting next to each other at a pond, talking to each other. And the frog said, if I could ask God anything, I think I'd ask God, why has God done nothing about all the evil in this world? Why has God done nothing about all the poor people? Why has God done nothing about all the suffering? And then the duck said to the frog, you know what I think God would ask you? Why haven't you done anything about all the suffering? And the frog was like, maybe I wouldn't ask God that after all. Where is God? The answer, I think, is waiting for us to speak, and more importantly, to act. To place our trust in the missions and the work that God has called us to do, and not to place our faith and our certainty in the ways of the world. Sure, they might feel more familiar and easier to just acquiesce to, but they do not deserve our certainty. Because just like in those cisterns, there are cracks in human reality. I always appreciate, I get newspaper clippings sometimes from some of you. Peggy always brings me newspaper clippings. She's not here. She would be really excited that I'm talking about some of the newspaper clippings she brings me, I think. So we'll have to tell her later. But she brought me some about a couple articles on the death penalty in Tennessee recently. As Tennessee, last week, a couple weeks ago, killed a severely mentally ill man that was on death row. And there were a lot of interesting points made about whether or not we as a people should still have the death penalty. One of the articles was actually from a German national who's working at the paper here in Knoxville. And she was writing about how odd it seemed to her that the country that saved her country from the Nazis and from the gas chambers of the Holocaust would still be putting people to death. But it was the other article, which was written from a conservative viewpoint, a Republican who was against the death penalty, that wrote about the number of people since 1973 that have been proven innocent while on death row, in many cases after they were executed. And he asked, how can any of us agree with the death penalty when we know how flawed human judgment is? We're putting our certainty in something with a lot of cracks. Not just in the death penalty, but when we put our faith in human creations. When we put our faith fully, solely in secular ways. We're having certainty in something that there can be no certainty about. How many times do we think we know what we're doing and we realize we messed up pretty badly? Sometimes, I think I know where I'm going and I'm like, wait, how did I get here? Because the mind wanders a little bit. You take a turn you didn't mean to take. Or when you're going someplace that you always go, when you were supposed to be going somewhere else. There have been a few times where I mean to be somewhere else and I find myself here. Human certainty is flawed. We all know that. We all have ample examples of that. And yet we put our faith in the secular world way more than we should. And that's what Jeremiah was talking about today. Where is God when we put our faith solely in humanity? When we put our certainty in things that do not deserve our certainty, the water will find the cracks. But God's living water waits to rain down on all of us in justice and equality and freedom for all. And that water waits for us to build the way. That living water waits for us to lead the way. We might ask, where is God? But God might instead be asking, where are we? Amen.